All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and or persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is pre-recorded and is called Empathy. Thank you to DCTV and Carmen Stanley, Program Director, to Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and to Crochet Starnes on audio and teleprompter. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing. This capacity is one of the ways that we can tell whether we're using our prefrontal godly brain. Humanity is ready to end centuries of corruption by our very nature. All that we fear in the world is caused by a deterioration of our greatest asset, our prefrontal godly brain. We're born with a primitive reptilian brain that drives behavioral compulsions, allowing us to survive within various social pecking orders, such as our family, academic, and work environments. Two reptilian survival compulsions necessary for animal survival threaten human extinction. One is the domination compulsions, the need to oppress, subjugate, control, and bully others. And the second is submission compulsion, the willingness to be oppressed, subjugated, controlled, and bullied. A functional godly brain can abolish reptilian domination and submission compulsions, the root cause of socialism, war, and unfathomable human suffering. Backed by neuroimagery studies, cognitive science, and other evidence, brain awakening is described happening in 3 successive stages. The first is individuation, a willingness to stand alone on one's selfhood despite conformist social pressures. The second is self-actualization, a deepening recognition that actually one's thoughts, feelings, behaviors come from within and have little to do with social conditioning. And the third is transcendence, a realization that a separate ego is illusory. We are created equal with the same basic brain hardware used by Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Lao Tzu, and all the saints and sages throughout the ages, as they taught us about our inalienable transcendent potential. Like them, we have all the right stuff built into our brain, simply waiting for a spark to ignite the awakening. Awaken Your Godly Brain is a roadmap to sustainable happiness, transformative personal power, and world survival. There is a worksheet on page 320 of this book, which you can get at Barnes & Noble, and you can score your self-actualizing or social reptilian tendencies. And the false reality is breaking down, and I've given you some tweets, some things that I've put in my social media, demonstrating how the critical mass is stronger than the banking cartel. I've had to fight the hackers in my PC in order to prepare the teleprompter for this segment. And then when I emailed it to DCTV, they stripped it from the email. The powers that were, that is, the people who have not realized that they are crippled and not playing with the full deck, as the prefrontal cortex in their brain is not working. I'm showing you how I've placed commercial liens on many of the politicians who are not playing with the full deck, including Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Martin Dempsey, John McHugh, Jacob Lew, together with other lien debtors at the Treasury Department. The World Bank Tokyo office is now, well, I've been in touch with them, and the people in Tokyo are actually teaming up with the people in the United States military because they don't want to be overrun by China. They want us to make good on our treaties of defense. And so on November 9th, I tweeted, "Dear people, I'm happy to be in touch with you in real time. The attacks on me have been very fierce because the banking cartel is trying hard to avoid the breakdown in the false reality that is now evident. I and the rest of the critical mass am starting to expose the corruption. As an example, let me show you the email that I just sent about the commercial lien on Joe Biden, and this was commented on by someone who's attending the LA Trade Tech. On the 8th of November, Mr. Leonides said, "Hi Karen, hope you're doing well. Joe Biden will be at LATTC on November 14th. What should I ask him?" Well, the opportunity went by and he wasn't asked anything. "Do you still have the commercial liens you placed on him? If so, can I have a copy?" And yes, you can read them in the teleprompter. Below is a copy of the email I received. LA Trade Tech will host presidential campaign stop by former Vice President Joe Biden on Thursday, November 14. Doors open at 2 p.m. and the event is set to begin at 2:30 p.m. Biden's campaign said the Democratic Party candidate will lay out his vision for America and listen to voters' concerns and ideas around restoring the soul of the nation, rebuilding the middle class, and unifying the country. Admission is free, and then there's a contact for tickets. And then Santos is the one who sent me that email. And I responded to Santos. This is the commercial lien on Joe Biden, and see paragraph 21. Ask Joe Biden whether the United States Constitution is in effect or whether it has been suspended since 1871, and that is the case. And then you can see from the tweets that I've put, this is what I wrote in the commercial lien. Barack Obama, acting outside his office as President of the U.S., Joe Biden, acting outside his office as Vice President of the U.S., Martin Dempsey, acting outside his office as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, John McHugh, acting outside his office as Secretary of the Army, Jacob Lew, acting outside his office as Secretary of the Treasury, together with other lien debtors at the Treasury Department, interfered with the return of the United States monetary gold reserves held by, and then the name of the trust at the World Bank is called TVM LSM 666 in the global currency reset. I'm also having some difficulties getting through. The social media isn't working or only working in a limited way. I couldn't tweet the teleprompter for the video on DCTV, that was the one about mind control, because it was deleted. I also post my tweets on Facebook, and you could see the tweet that was taken down. I could only post the teleprompter by using Scribd, and that's one of the places that I put my social media. The black nobility and banking cartel have still not realized that their attempt to use mind control and erase tweets is only alerting the critical mass of people who are able to understand reality. So you can read the upcoming teleprompter that talks about scalar weaponry. Not all of us are susceptible to this weaponry, and not all of us are hypnotized. We in the critical mass are busy thinking for the people that are hypnotized. Why is it hard to think? And that was what I was answering in the social media. And you can see that if you click on the links, if the links work. Sometimes they're taken down. And that's also the title of the video, which I put up 2 weeks ago. And I signed this as Acting General Counsel and the name of the oldest bank, part of the World Bank, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And then on the 14th of November, I repeated a series of tweets that a French woman repeated. And these tweets show that there's no contest between the bankers who are on the way out and humanity. And it's got a part in there which gives the secret to corrupt paper money. And now if you'll stop scrolling, I'll explain what that secret is. It's something called seigniorage. When central banks print paper money, what they do is they keep the difference between whatever the face amount of the currency is and how much it costs them to print. And sometimes when you've got digital money, it doesn't cost them anything. So they're just manufacturing money out of thin air. They think they're entitled to keep it. And all of the central banks are in on this scam. It is a scam. And the reason why I say it's a scam is because the central banks actually owe us much more money than country debt is worth. They owe us $2 quadrillion. And I can explain how they owed this money. Back in the 1930s, Jose Rizal gathered up the bonds that the Federal Reserve issued. And these bonds had, they were denominated in gold. The people had swapped their gold for bonds. They're called Treaty of Versailles bonds. And the interest has compounded. And you know, when interest compounds, it can get, the sums can get to be astronomical. And that's what's happened now. The Federal Reserve owes us much more money than we owe them. And so there is no country debt because it's offset. Whatever they claim that we owe them, well, they owe us much, much more. And what I did was I took this debt and I recorded it with the secretaries of state of all the states where the Federal Reserve had branches. And yeah, the person in Illinois, Jesse White, tried to claim that this lien was not valid, and then the Federal Reserve moved to Illinois. But it is valid. And so Jesse White is simply, he's trying to get away with claiming that the Treaty of Versailles bonds are not really owed by the Federal Reserve, but they are. And then when I've recorded these liens under something called the Uniform Commercial Code, then I went to the Postmaster General of the Universal Postal Union, and I had a notarial protest. Now, this means that the paperwork is in place for all of country debt to be erased. And whenever anybody says there's country debt, they're actually, they're just bamboozling you. Okay, now let's continue with the teleprompter. The bankers and the black nobility are trying to deny the reality that humanity is made up of transcendent beings. And what do I mean by transcendent beings? If you can stop the teleprompter, I'll try to explain that. What that means is that we are all interconnected. We're actually all thinking together. When we think, our brains are processing the information as if we individuals have modems. And that's how they can use this military scalar weaponry. Because then when we think, we listen to the voice of the scalar weaponry instead of our own individual thoughts. And some people are much more susceptible than these suggestions. It's as if they're hypnotized. And I know very well how realistic this scalar weaponry feels to a person who's sensitive to it, because my family members are sensitive to scalar weaponry, and so I know that I'm not getting through to them, and they're experiencing all kinds of things that they consider to be reality, and they're not reality. What reality is, it's the way we individuals process our thoughts. And I've explained to you before about the 100 monkey effect, which is that once a critical mass of people thinks that something is real, it becomes real. And so the critical mass now understands that money is corrupt, paper money that is, and that in order to end the corruption that and the domination that the bankers are subjecting us to, all we have to do is we have to use real money, and real money is out of either gold or silver or other precious metals or gemstones. And in the local communities, money can also be used in a barter system so that anything that's worth anything can be used as money. They can exchange these things in the barter system. And once people convert the paper money that is issued by the central banks and isn't worth anything, once they convert that to real money, we can start ending their domination and control, which, as you know, that's what the people who are unable to transcend their first the first part of their brains. So that's how we know that we're going to be transcending and using the prefrontal cortex in our brain, because enough of us have started using it. And there's a critical mass of people. And I've been looking at other ways of measuring whether we're in a different reality. And one of the ways of measuring is military technology, which it's called the power transition model, which predicted ever since I got some statements up in the UK Parliament, it predicted that we were going to end the domination and control of the network of global corporate control. Now, just because it's predicted, we don't know when this is going to come about. And that's one of the things that people write in, you know, on YouTube in the comments section. There are lots of comments saying that what I'm telling you is incorrect because we don't see any evidence. And the fact is, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. But I can't tell you when. It's like a tug of war. And I know that our side is much, much stronger. How could it not be stronger? Because people have these innate capabilities. They simply have to start using them. Now, I say simply. It's not so simple. When you try to use these capabilities, they're not just in the top drawer that you can take out. You have to exercise them. But the fact is, we are exercising them, and they are accessible. And we know human beings who have shown the way, and we have to follow them. So I guess the thing I want you to focus on is how we are victimized by the corruption in the money through seigniorage, through paper money. That's a mechanism for just buying real assets without having the right to. It's because central banks, we've arranged our political system in a way that cedes control to the people who want to dominate us, and that we've also realized that part of human nature is to submit to the domination. So once we own up to who we are, and we take that seriously, there's no way that this domination and control and submission to the domination and control is going to continue, because it's not optimal. It's not the way we want it. And you can see from the comments in the YouTube comment section how people are communicating with each other. Now, my function is to keep repeating these things to people, and to be personable enough so that I get through. And in truth, when I see the earliest things that I wrote on DCTV, I'm very critical of them, because I'm just talking about facts and legal arguments, and this is not convincing to people. Most people are not lawyers. And so even though these arguments are correct, they're not convincing. Now, how do I convince people? I convince people mostly by convincing other people and having other people convince them. And this is happening. It may not be happening quickly, but it certainly is happening. You can see that in the comments section. You can see how people are learning from each other. And I'm very, very gratified. That's one of the things that we were talking about last week. We were talking about gratitude. Yes, I'm grateful for the people who have started using their prefrontal cortex of their brains. This is going to change the world. Now, how long is it going to take us? As I've mentioned, well, it's irreversible. One of the ways that I know it's irreversible is because Japan doesn't want to surrender to China, and the only way that they are not going to, that the United States is going to make good on its Treaty of Defense is if the United States possesses the gold which is in the monetary gold reserves that are put in the global debt facility. So we are going to access these precious metals. I don't know what it is that I have to do or other people have to do, because clearly it's not just up to me. I can be as convincing as I want, but if people are not spreading this information to other people, then we're not going to be making very much progress. That's all I can say. But I do believe that human beings, being what we are, we have to have a relationship. And so I'm doing whatever I can to have a relationship with all of humanity. You'll have to, relationships are not one-way things, so you're going to have to tell me what it is that I need to do in order to be part of this relationship. And I learned actually that this relationship is a very important mechanism for liberating ourselves. I learned this through a memorial service for a friend who, when I saw what her family was saying about her at her memorial, I realized that the fact that she had a relationship with people, that this mattered. And so it really does matter that I have a relationship with the people who are writing in to YouTube and making comments. That's why I do respond to each and every comment. Some of the comments I just I delete. I have to delete them because some people are just there to confuse you, and it doesn't do any good. There's something called controlled opposition, which will use arguments that are partially true, and then they'll mix in other things that are untrue. And one of the things that controlled opposition is now focusing on is whether there's life outside of the Earth. Now, this is not something that that's going to help us if we're trying to fight corruption on Earth. So we're going to simply pass on this question. We'll raise it some other time. We're also just going to pass on the question of organized religions. It's not because these are not important, it's just that they distract us. I have had to wrestle with the banking cartel in preparing this teleprompter. This has only strengthened my resolve and taught me some word processing skills for next time. I've showed you the tweets that were most popular in my social media. I've also tried to let you know that we are all responsible first for our own behavior. As long as we know how humanity is hardwired with empathy, we know that the bankers are fighting a losing battle. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.